War Sovereign Soaring the Heavens, Chapter 768. You're really shocking, kid. You're only comprehended void interpretation concept for 5 days, yet have already smoothly broken through to the void interpretation stage. Such advancement is sufficient to cause any 9th level void initiation stage martial artist to blush with shame. Feng Wudao looked at Duan Lingtian as he sighed. My luck was just good. Duan Lingtian grinned modestly, and he wasn't surprised that he'd broken through too swiftly in the void interpretation stage now. Not to mention his origin energy had attained the limit of the 9th level of the void initiation stage. Even the overbearing medicinal strength of the rebirth pill that was accumulated within his body was sufficient to allow him to swiftly break through to the void interpretation stage. The medicinal strength of the rebirth pill was no joke. Almost 2 months of time. My goal is the 2nd level of the void interpretation stage. Duan Lingtian closed his eyes once more and continued cultivating. Even though he could rely on the concept fragment to comprehend concept while he cultivated, but he didn't do this because he had to concentrate on the mental cultivation method of the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. The 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique was called the Sword Dragon form. Besides being cultivated to advance in the void interpretation stage, the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the Sword Dragon technique, was also capable of assisting him in swiftly comprehending sword concept. Not only that, this Sword Dragon form also carried along a high-grade heaven rank offensive martial skill, the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. The 9 Dragons Radiant Flash was a martial skill that utilized sword concept at its foundation. My wind concept is already a void interpretation concept, and it satisfies the conditions to execute a heaven rank martial skill. But this 9 Dragons Radiant Flash instead requires sword concept as its foundation to be utilized. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. At the very least, I have to comprehend 1st level elementary sword concept. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian didn't think any further and started cultivating according to the mental cultivation method of the Sword Dragon form, and he quickly became completely immersed in it. At the same time that he improved his cultivation with the Sword Dragon form, he was able to comprehend sword force and even sword concept. Of course, it was only capable of assisting him to comprehend until 1st level elementary sword concept, and the following levels had to be comprehended by himself. In this way, I can't divide my attention to comprehend other concepts with a concept fragment until I've comprehended 1st level elementary sword concept. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian had no other choice. Now, he only hoped that he would be able to comprehend 1st level elementary sword concept as soon as possible while advancing his cultivation. After he broke through to the void interpretation stage, Duan Lingtian had continued cultivating and had quickly become familiar with the mental cultivation method of the Sword Dragon form, allowing his cultivation to step on the right track. When he awoke from his cultivation, it was already half a month later. The rising sun rose high in the sky and sunlight poured down to the earth, and the sunlight enveloped Duan Lingtian, causing his to be unable to help but narrow his eyes. This is the northern desert. Duan Lingtian looked down towards the boundless ground beneath the azure-eyed eagle, and this ground was covered in desolate plains and hills that were uninhabited and boundless. Yes. Feng Wudao replied. Uncle Feng, you've come here in the past. Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Once. Feng Wu Dao nodded. The furthest place I've gone is the ancient desert city of the northern desert. The ancient desert city is the city of the foreign lands that's the closest to our various dynasties. Duan Lingtian nodded with understanding. Swoosh. Suddenly, a wave of jarring howls of the wind entered into Duan Lingtian's ears from behind, and it caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but turn around and look. He saw an extremely swift demon beast flying towards them, and he could faintly see two figures on the back of the demon beast. The demon beast was flying at full speed, and its speed wasn't inferior to the azure-eyed eagle. Coupled with it utilizing its void interpretation concept, it quickly closed the distance between itself and the azure-eyed eagle. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian saw the appearance of the demon beast clearly, and it was a flying demon beast that seemed like a vulture yet was extremely unsightly. A 7th level void interpretation stage demon beast. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force had extremely easily detected the cultivation of the vulture demon beast. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but search through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, and he quickly found records relating to this type of vulture demon beast. Lightning vulture, a void interpretation stage demon beast that's even more formidable than an azure-eyed eagle. Top figures of the lightning vulture family are even existences at the 9th level of the void interpretation stage. It's even to the extent that a demon had once appeared in the lightning vulture family. Duan Lingtian was shocked in his heart when he found out about the lightning vulture. Swoosh. Meanwhile, the lightning vulture had approached the azure-eyed eagle before moving in parallel with the azure-eyed eagle after a short moment. The two figures on the lightning vulture had entered clearly into Duan Lingtian's eyes. A young man a little over 30 years of age that wore a jade green long robe, and he had starry eyes, sword-shaped brows, a handsome appearance, and a graceful bearing. However, at this moment, his face contained slight anxiousness on it. At the side of the young man was a young woman around the age of 15 or 16. The young woman had an appearance like carved jade, and she held the young man's sleeve tightly as her watery and large eyes revealed an expression of fear. Right when Duan Lingtian was curious about why these two people would have an expression like this, another jarring howl of the wind sounded out from behind Duan Lingtian. Another demon beast flew out to appear before Duan Lingtian's eyes. This demon beast's speed was swift like a bolt of lightning, and it was much faster than the azure-eyed eagle and the lightning vulture. Swoosh. After a short moment, this demon beast surpassed the azure-eyed eagle and chased after the lightning vulture that had already flown far ahead of the azure-eyed eagle. Another lightning vulture. Duan Lingtian saw the appearance of this demon beast clearly, and it was an exactly similar demon beast as the lightning vulture from before. But its body was even more enormous, and the oppressive feeling it emitted was much heavier than the previous lightning vulture. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out and detected the cultivation of this lightning vulture at the first possible moment. A 9th level void interpretation stage demon beast. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted instantly when he detected the cultivation of this lightning vulture. Even if it was in the lightning vulture family, a 9th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture was considered to be an extremely rare top figure, yet never had he imagined that he would encounter one. On the back of the lightning vulture stood a black-robed man, and this person was completely enveloped in a loose black robe, causing Duan Lingtian to be utterly unable to see his appearance clearly. Under his curiosity, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out with the intention of detecting the black-robed man's cultivation. But his spiritual force hadn't even approached the man before it seemed as if it had pierced into a ball of cotton and had no place to exert force on. Your spiritual force isn't bad for your young age. Right at this moment, an extremely hoarse voice suddenly entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it revealed a trace of gloominess. Obviously, it was the voice of the black-robed man. From the voice, Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was an old man. Instantly, Duan Lingtian broke out in cold sweat. He was practically able to confirm that this black-robed man was in existence at the void transformation stage or above. During this half a year of time, besides this black-robed man, he'd already successively encountered 2 void transformation stage experts. The first was the Darkhan dynasty's imperial family's Bainan Xiang, the second was the Darming dynasty Zhao clan's Zhao Kun. Both void transformation stage experts had 2 similarities. Firstly, they were both existences at the first level of the void transformation stage. Secondly, they were both dead. The former was killed by the miraculous talisman left behind by his father, Duan Ru Feng, whereas, the latter had been killed by Suli's master. We've arrived at the northern desert. Suddenly, a familiar voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it was Feng Tianwu who'd awoken from her cultivation. Big brother Duan, you've awoken. Feng Tianwu smiled lightly to Duan Lingtian, and in next to no time, she noticed the 2 demon beasts ahead that grew closer and closer together. What's that? Right at this moment, the 2 lightning vultures ahead had stopped. The black-robed man that rode the 9th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture had easily surpassed the 7th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture from behind and stopped it. The 2 lightning vultures were in confrontation, whereas the azure-eyed eagle that Duan Lingtian's group of 3 rode was instead moving closer and closer to these 2 lightning vultures that were in confrontation. Lu San, are you really going to exterminate us, brother and sister? The young man that stood on the 7th level void interpretation stage lightning vulture spoke to the black-robed man, and it entered clearly into the ears of Duan Lingtian's group of 3. Second young master, I'm only carrying out my orders, I hope you don't blame me. The eldest young master has already spoken that he'll be uneasy in his heart until you're dead. The black-robed man's hoarse voice sounded out. That animal. The young man was extremely angry yet was helpless, and he said with a low voice. You can kill me. But I hope you can let Ping-er go, she's innocent. Second brother, I won't leave you. If we die, we'll die together. Even though the eyes of the young woman by the side of the young man contained terror within it, her expression was extremely firm, and she was fearless at her young age. I'm sorry, second young master. The eldest young master said that both you and the 7th young miss must die. The black-robed man continued as the robes he wore fluttered with the wind. But the black-robed man didn't make a move for now, because his gaze had descended onto the azure-eyed eagle that grew closer and closer to him. More precisely speaking, his gaze had descended onto Duan Lingtian's group of 3. Even though Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu felt that this pair of brother and sister were pitiable, and they even felt sympathy for them, yet they didn't dare act rashly. That black-robed man was obviously an extremely terrifying expert, and even Feng Wu Dao might not be able to go against him. It was fine if they didn't interfere, yet once they interfered, they might even lose their lives. There was no need for them to take a risk for the sake of two strangers. Of course, perhaps if Duan Lingtian utilized the talisman his father left behind for him, he would be able to kill this black-robed man, but there were only two talismans remaining in his possession. Using one would be equivalent to having one lesser life in the future. He wasn't magnanimous to the point of being willing to utilize such a precious talisman for the sake of two strangers. But unfortunately, something might not go as they wished. "Don't move!" The black-clothed man shouted out in a low voice as a terrifying aura swept out to instantly envelop the azure-eyed eagle, causing the azure-eyed eagle to stop, and it caused Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's expressions to turn grim.